Oh, hello.
Hello, friends. We're back. And two of us are in front of a green screen.
I feel like I'm not inside down now.
I'm actually inside Lincoln Cathedral. What are you on about?
Amazing.
And your hand disappears as you do it. It's amazing. Lincoln Cathedral has got magical powers. In case you didn't know, friends, do be careful when you go to Lincoln Cathedral because it might eat you.
It's actually a time door.
Don't tell Catherine.
I performed witchcraft in Lincoln Cathedral last week, so it's Philippa's turn this week.
Before we just put my microphone towards me. Before we get into anything shenanigans, shall I do the thing?
Do the thing.
Hello, friends. Welcome. This is History After Dark. Just gone 8:15. We called it History After Dark because when we made it, it was winter, as it is now, and so it was dark when we did it. But it also fits because we like to talk about the history facts. This is how we know them. We like to give our opinions, but while doing so, unlike on our other platforms, here we like to enjoy four-letter expletives, innuendo, and general vulgarity. So with that being said, if you happen to be in an open plan office with a judgmental boss who does not like a liberal use of F and C words, I suggest you put a headphone in. If you're in a car, a kitchen, a living room, or some other space with a small child, we call this child Timmy. Timmy is a problem. You can have a Tim problem on a mug, or as Catherine's breasts are masterfully showing us, it can also be on your bapparoonie. If you happen to be around a little Timmy, Timmy's the sort of child who hears one vulgar thing once, takes it into school with him, tells his teacher all about Catherine's tits. Now, or something else equally absolutely profane, worse than Catherine getting her tits out on the internet for free, because frankly, you should be paid for that. And so, Catherine Cunning, who is the teacher, she does not know anything about History After Dark, so she breaks the first cardinal rule of History After Dark, which is if you don't know what it means, it's not for you, don't Google it. She Googled it. She is now traumatized. She's in a corner crying. You've been called at school. You've got to explain why Timmy knows this thing, and also you now have to fork over for half of 12 months of her having the therapy to deal with what's happened. So put a headphone in. Alternatively, you can watch us on the playback here on the YouTubes. I say that. It's always worth watching us live because we may say something that is so unspeakably depraved, but for all of our sakes, because we are too pretty to be in prison, we would need to yeet the footage into the sun. So do try and watch us live. It's happened once before, which means we're either getting better or less discerning, or we're just another.
And I've had an espresso martini and a glass of wine, so
hello.
Rosy cheek, nothing to do with the wine.
I'm going to remind Philippa, just in case.
Yeah,
no speak for free. Another one of our rules. A further rule, I say a rule, we hope you're all adults, please, we beg. With that being said, you can make your own choices. We will never endorse this being a drinking game. This will never be legal or medical advice. Don't sue. And finally, our last rule. After this expertly crafted and delivered disclaimer, where we have made it clear what tonight is about. If at any point I see in the comments, either here or over on any of our individual platforms, someone saying, oh, it's very informative, but I don't like how much you swear. It's not ladylike. We're not ladies. Suck it up, buttercup. And also, I know what's happening. You know that is a trigger that's going to make us want to pin that comment that you will be ritually abused. And you want that. You want the ritual humiliation because that's your kink. And kinks are fine. But kinks without consent are not. And if you want some dominatrix in a Brighton basement, I'm not speaking from experience, trust and believe, but if you want some dominatrix in a Brighton basement who goes by the name Miss Whiplash, I couldn't possibly come up with who that might be, then you would pay more than we're getting paid to be here tonight. Those are the rules. This is History After Dark. Welcome, friends. Let's do this thing.
That was fabulous. Beverly says she's down in Kent. We may have had this conversation previously. I apologise if we have, but that's where I grew up. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed
not
Timmy.
Not confused with Kent.
Not Kent.
No. So what are we doing today then?
Who knows?
Who are we?
This dude.
So we're on our history heroes, and we are on the letter C, and the C is for Capability Brown. So we're laying him out slightly differently, and this may be the way that we move towards laying out our future heroes. My good self, I will be talking about his early life. Spoiler alert, there is not much, but I'll tell you what I know. Then my lady Catherine of Ibbotson will be discussing his life's works and where you might find him. And then Her Grace, the Governess Philip Lacey de Brule, will be talking about why he's a hero and also why there might be some controversy around him. In betwixt between, we'll be doing some Word of the Week. That was what was the week? Okay, the pits of hell, didn't it? Word of the Week. And we will also, of course, be hearing from our widow of Lancaster. Philippa has got her hat, so
she's all right because she's got a far superior alternative.
She's, in fact,
I've found something to work. I think it'll work. Yeah.
You say Philippa's going to come in. You say Philippa's going to come in and do hers last. I think she might be passed out by that juncture.
Oh no, I'm on water now. I am. Oh, you can't see it.
There we go.
I'm on water now. There you go. Yeah.
In the famous invisible water.
Only.
Okay, shall I hop in and do the starty bits?
Go in. We like the starty bits. Do your thing.
Right. Capability Brown. We know that he is baptized in 1716, and as baptism usually happens fairly soon after birth, we can thus assume that he is also born in 1716. He is born into England under Hanoverian control. George IV is on the throne and has been for a little while. He is baptized at St. Wilfrid's Church in Kirkhall, I believe that's how it's pronounced, or Kirkhale, Northumberland, which, if you know anything about me, will make you aware that this, to me, is a very clear message of the kind of upbringing he must have had. Because if you live outside what I call the keyhole of England, there are dragons. And so that means that, in my mind, Capability Brown grew up either training or fighting dragons because he lived in Northumberland. He was the fifth of 6 children. Obviously, there was not a lot of activities to be getting on with, so they didn't have much hobby except for this. His father, William Brown, was a yeoman farmer and estate steward. And so what that means is that he is essentially, he's a freeman. He has the liberty to work where he chooses, and he chooses this particular estate. And this, Philip has put a lovely image up of.
Sorry, yes. Do you want him? Sorry, I pressed it too soon, but maybe that's. That's the man. Look at his kind face. This is who he grows into. Little Capability Brown, who is born in Northumberland, grows into this fine figure of a gentleman. His wife is Ursula Hall. So Capability Brown's mother is Ursula, and she is the daughter of somebody who also resides in Northumberland. So they've not moved far. Her father was John Hall. What is interesting is that the land on which this family work, because Capability Brown will end up working there, is the land belonging to the Lorraine family, namely a gentleman called Sir William Lorraine. Now, why I find this particularly interesting is because this next piece of information I'm going to give you, I have my opinions about what this might mean, but I don't know the full context, and I think it's very open to supposition for a couple of reasons. So Capability Brown, 2 of his older brothers, so Capability's baptized 1716. He's got an older brother, John, who is, his date of birth is believed to be 1708. And he's got an older brother, George, who is born 1713. John marries into the Lorraine family. So he becomes a marital relation of the William Lorraine. It's unclear from the available evidence which member of Sir William Lorraine's family he marries, but he does marry in.
And George, the other brother, born in 1713, marries into another gentry family with the family name Fenwick. I'm not sure if that's any relation to the part of the John Lewis partnership in this country, the shopping thing where they have Fenwicks. I don't know if that is a connected name. Why I'm bringing this up, and I'm sort of, I suppose, labouring this point, I guess, is I think it's very interesting that we have two sons of a yeoman farmer and estate steward, essentially, although the word is not a particularly nice one, the help. Two of his sons are marrying girls from gentry families. But it's unclear, at least from the evidence, the available evidence that I've been able to find, I will keep looking, is what date these marriages occur. And so one doesn't know whose elevation has made these brothers eligible to these gentry family. Is it something that the parents have managed to do? So presumably William Brown and or his wife, most likely William Brown, or is this an elevation that's been made possible because of capability and the place and position that he ends up enjoying? I don't know, but I do think it's interesting. And to me, it's perhaps a sign that social mobility is in order here. Capability Brown goes to the local village school. It's in a place called Cambo. And after leaving school, he works for Sir William Lorraine, who has these extensive formal gardens to work on. And then I believe, Catherine, you're going to go into some of his work, but that is one of the first places that he has a commission to work at. And so I'm going to stop talking about his career and leave that to Catherine. What I will say is that he marries at St. Mary's Church a woman called Bridget Wyatt. And just like his parents before him, he is very keen on having children. They have 9 children between 1745 and 1761. So he is he's active in that respect. And then most of what we know about him is his commissions, his landscape business. We know quite a lot about the technology that he uses and the style. That is the vast majority of what people speak about. And so I am going to leave that to Catherine. He is, in terms of his character, there are people around him and people who he is forced to interact with and work with, who do mock him for being lacking education and also for his relatively humble background. And I think that there might be an element to which that is sour grapes because of the talent that Catherine will be talking about that he clearly describes. I think that they are bitter because in terms of the social circles that he moves in, the money he's able to make, the profile and name he makes for himself, he far eclipses the members of the gentry that he's working for. What is interesting to me is that I haven't seen evidence of him really doing anything apart from his work to create this kind of ill feeling. In the available evidence I've seen, people are sour and bitter with him, but it's not like a kind of Thomas Wolsey situation where he gets himself into a position and then he likes to throw his weight around. That's not something that I see being mentioned when it comes to capability, that he's, lording over people in any other context apart from that he professionally knows what should be happening. He does struggle with ill health in his life. He is said to have suffered from asthma, which, and I do wonder actually if some of the places and the houses that he worked on, whether that kind of country air might have been quite good for him in some ways. But I imagine that being out in all weathers and perhaps in the cold probably would have had an equal and opposite effect.
he works and he puts together all sorts of plans. He frequently puts together plans and does surveys without charging or being able to charge them or invoicing for them. So he has this incredible, to my mind, this incredible talent for this artistic vision of how the outside world should look, but he's not necessarily great at the financial business side of it. So he is working himself into an early grave. Well, not necessarily a massively early grave, but he suddenly collapses in February of 1783 and he dies the next day. So he's had these health complaints with asthma. He's working and working and working, and then he just has this sudden collapse, and he passes away. And we're going to be talking about what happens for the rest of the time. But yes, so 1617 to 1783, that is a man who is knocking there in terms of years for the time. However, it's unclear what is the cause of death. There we go.
Oh.
Isn't that nice?
I found a picture.
Right.
There you go.
So that's what I have for you.
I have to say, pretty.
Brown.
I had the same thought about how the brothers who've been working on the land, how they may have caught the eye of of the ladies.
Well, I mean, catching the eye of is different from getting permission from the father or the uncle, whoever else it is. I mean, liking a bit of liking the gardener.
Like Lady Chatterley's lover comes to mind.
Yeah.
Anyway,
kind of
sorry.
diet Coke effect. Hey, Philippa, it's time for
Word of the week. Word of the week. Poof, poof, poof. Word of the week. Word of the week. Poof, poof, poof.
Okay. I actually have two. One for you to guess at, and then one that I thought you might just like the origin of. So the one to guess at, and you might know it because you're very good at words. But anyway, I hadn't heard of it before, and it's pronounced. Oh, I hope it's pronounced this way. Calumny.
Calumny.
Yeah, maybe it's not pronounced like that at all.
It's tiny bit drunk, Philippa. Do you want to type it in the comments, love, and we'll see if we can read it out.
Say it out loud. For God's sake. Right, hold on. I'm going to type it. I'm so sorry, buddy. There you go.
Oh,
Calumny.
don't you be Googling it.
I'm going to get Google to pronounce it. I'm going to get Google to pronounce it.
Calumny.
See, that's what I said.
Calumny.
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 It sounds like a description of a person that's a bit like nice, like a nice description of a person.
I don't think we'd like someone who did this.
Oh, a bad description of a person.
A good description of a person, but
because
not
they are. It's a
someone
good
we
way of
would like.
describing a bad person.
Or something they do, yeah.
Margaret's put slander. Something they do. Is it that they are cats frozen? Is it because they've frozen? Is that what's happened to them?
No, Margaret's got it right. It is basically making up lies about a person.
It is. So it's making false or defamatory statements in order to damage their reputation. So with that intention in mind, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, so that's, there's an intent there as well.
So you are literally going out of your way to use your words to damage another person.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Politicians do it all the time. So they're saying something, and really the content of what they're saying is one thing, but what the actual intention of it is to cause reputational damage to their target. Yeah, we get this all the time, where sort of the evidence isn't there and it's almost dismissed, but the damage is done. So I thought that was quite useful. Interesting word. And then the other one is, because this is relevant to anyone, probably in any other country actually, is the word sheriff. Do you know where the word sheriff comes from?
I don't, but I'm about to find out.
Oh,
that's really
there you are.
Hello.
Do you know? Hello. We can just hear you. Oh.
I reckon she's gone a bit wrong, so she's going out to come back in.
Yeah, we'll wait for Kat to come back and see if she.
Maybe her internet has also had a glass of wine and an espresso martini.
Honestly, and someone's called me a lightweight, and I am. Like, I don't know what's happened to me. I spread it out as well.
Because you're in the church. It might not be.
Yeah, it's having a bigger effect.
Yes. Yeah. You're feeling all encompassed by the glory around you. It's lovely.
I did actually take this picture. I did take this picture. Yes. Where are we? Monday. This is
I know where you were on Monday, even if you don't.
You know where I am all the time. Yeah. So
Wicked Cathedral's beautiful, though, isn't it? So Philip was there Monday. I was there on last Thursday. It is very stunning.
Here we go. She's back.
There we go.
There we are.
There we have it. Yeah. Oh, now we're all in the wrong place.
It told me to disconnect from the internet, but I hadn't. It was telling please.
So, right. So sheriff, right. We'll do this quickly then. So yes. So it is Anglo-Saxon in origin. So during Anglo-Saxon times, we began to have geographical areas sort of deemed as shires, and a reeve, or reeve actually, but is kind of the law enforcer, the chief law enforcer of that particular of an area. So we get shire reeve, sheriff. So that's where that comes from. We don't have sheriffs anymore, but obviously, well, we kind of do, but it's not really the same thing. Whereas that word is obviously travelled and is used elsewhere. So there you go. I like it. Word.
That's pretty cool.
So there you are.
Etymology, yeah. Kat, it makes a change, actually. It's your technology that hates you today.
No,
it's
yes. I have ordered a laptop, but they don't come next day delivery. It's not going to be here until the start of February. So that is a pain in the balls.
Really?
But we'll get there.
I thought it'd become.
Yeah, I've asked for extra active memory so that I can stream and it not have a nervous collapse.
Well, we all need the occasional nervous collapse.
Well, even if we don't, we're getting it anyway.
Yeah, that these things sometimes happen. I like a bit of word etymology as well, because sometimes it comes up with something very surprising, doesn't it?
I love it when we've got words that go back to. I do like pre-Norman conquest words, pre the English language. Actually, Chaucer, pre-Chaucer, and then pre. I like anything that comes from before then. It's interesting. There you go. Anyway. There you go.
Right. Oh, it's me. It's me. Hang on a minute.
Oh.
No. Something just flashed up on my WhatsApp. Right. Anyway, okay, so Mr. Capability Brown, yes, he does seem like a rather lovely chap, I have to say. He does look very warm and cozy, like you'd make him a nice cup of tea.
Look at him again.
Yeah, I know. Like, I think he'd like a nice biscuit and a cup of tea, and he would sit round by the fire and you could tell nice stories. But as Kat said, he was sometimes a little bit resented, and I think, and we'll see as we talk about like some of his work and the things he's done, because I think that some of you will be more familiar with his work than you know. There have been things that you may have seen, even if you aren't in the UK and you haven't visited the UK, obviously because of the interest you have in British history, you're likely to have watched documentaries, seen reels, seen pictures, all sorts of things, where you will have seen some of these landscapes and not known, obviously, that it was him. And I did see somebody say at the start in the comments that they hadn't heard of him before. And as Philippa was saying when we were talking earlier, it is interesting to have somebody who's had such a big impact that a lot of people haven't heard of. Because it just goes to show that you don't have to be this incredibly famous throughout history, all singing, all dancing person for you to have achieved an awful lot. I think people sometimes did envy him. Part of that, as Kat touched on, was because, you know, he wasn't old money, and people don't like that, do they? That they saw him coming through and doing very well for himself. And maybe academically, he wasn't the most accomplished person comparatively to a lot of other people within his circles, but he absolutely, definitely had a natural raw talent for understanding the things that he worked with. So the way that, you know, you could manipulate the waterways, the way you use different types of soils, how the landscapes could lay and interact with each other and all things like that was just something that he had a real skill for putting together and understanding. So, you know, we've all heard of things where something's been built and then a few rainstorms later the whole thing has caved in because the person or people in question don't have quite the best way of working that architecture. Even today, where we have, you know, a lot more information and technology and things like that, whatever it was he had was the thing you needed to just beautifully create these landscapes quite seamlessly. So yes, we still have so many of these beautiful spaces, and I've seen estimates from 170 up to about 250 of his gardens and open spaces that we still have access to today and that people regularly visit. But yeah, he really knew how to use perspective and highlight the areas that would really be advantageous for his clients, and they loved him for the best part, really. He was, as said, the most famous figure in English landscape gardening, England's greatest gardener, if you like, bless him. Country house gardens are the thing, and I'm sure you'll have seen some of those, as we'll say. He was very hands-on as well, which can be a little bit unusual sometimes for people working in the poshest sets. It could very easily have been that he drew up the plans, gave them to somebody and stood back, but he was very much somebody who would come in and work with that. So again, all of these things, I think, add to his likability to an extent, because he's prepared to get in and get his hands dirty and make sure that everything is beautifully going the way that it needs to go to make sure that things work. Okay, so also this amused me. If you're a Monty Python fan, he was probably one of the first people to introduce shrubberies. So like a little bit of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. The Knights Who Say Ni would have appreciated Capability Brown's work. After school, so a little bit of sort of how his career path went, which covers a little bit of what Cats do, but you're just saying after he finished school, he left school at 16 and he became the head gardener's apprentice at the kitchen garden at Kirkdale Hall. Obviously, Cat talked about Kirkdale Hall, and he did move around. He didn't, you know, stay in one place for lengthy periods of time. He would go where he could get commissions and things like that, but he did move around quite freely. He could move quite far. He would go on horseback, assess a landscape to get that first sort of ideal feel for where it might go, and then come back. So he would move around in and out quite quickly. He could really look at these spaces and just assess them and see where he might be able to go with them. So his first commission was a new lake in the park at Kiddington Hall in Oxfordshire, I think. There was a couple of things that seemed a little bit like they said sort of slightly different things, but I think that's where we are with that. And he kind of went through the different locations as obviously he could get the commissions, and they offered him bigger projects and larger sums of money for doing that work, as you would expect to have it happen, really. Okay, so in the 18th century, he introduced the Palladian style of architecture into England. So one of the things that he became well known for really is that he very much was reinventing what was becoming fashionable in terms of the landscape gardening. So people were coming in, seeing his new works, and what had been there before was then considered really old-fashioned. He sort of created this style and got this reputation to be really moving things forward, creating a fashion. And that's what was starting to make him popular and sought after, was the look he could give people's spaces. So he had, yes, the style of gardening known as inscape landscape. And I still keep wanting to singing in an English country garden. He revolutionized the layout of estates. So he was appointed the head gardener in 1742 at age 26, but I couldn't tell you where because I don't appear to have written that down. But he was appointed the head gardener of somewhere, and I'm sure it was beautiful because he was head gardener of wherever it was. And he remained at Stowe for quite a while, and he was working under a chap called William Kent, who sadly for him was probably just as much a founder of this type of thing as Capability Brown was. But Capability Brown is the one that became sort of quite well known, really. We see him as the one really taking everything forward at this time. But he was becoming sought after at this point. He was beginning to earn good money, up to £500 that, you know, at that time, commission, which it says in 2021 was £72,700 for a commission on average. And he would do maybe at least a couple of these a year, which doesn't necessarily sound a lot. We've done 2 a year, but there's a vast amount of work that's going to go into these sorts of things. It also said that in 1764, he became George III's master gardener at Hampton Court. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But I think we all know that poor King George III was also known as Farmer George, wasn't he? Because he liked to be outside. He liked to work on the ground, in the gardens and things like that. I think he found it very therapeutic. So we will pop back to that in just a second. But what you can see is that he was starting to get commissions. Lord Cobham, he joined Lord Cobham's gardening staff in 1741. And what they actually allowed him to do was to start taking commissions from the people that were his associates and friends and things that were coming backward and forward from the estates. So they were seeing his work and they were appreciating his work. And of course, once one person likes it, somebody else wants to see it. And so this spiraled until he became very much in demand. People were really wanting his work. He was the place to be. He was the one that was designing these fashionable, beautiful spaces, whether other people liked it or not. So, yeah, and poor George said, I say we'll come back to him. So originally you'd had a lot of quite formally patterned styles. This is what we'd seen people working with to that point. And William Kent had started to replace these, as I said, in 1719, with these more naturalistic compositions. And I think one of the things that Capability Brown became known for was that he was looking to make spaces look really natural, to the point at which a lot of people would say that if they hadn't have known that the landscapes of some of the places where they were visiting, they wouldn't have known that these had originally been formal spaces. They really believed a lot of these spaces that Capability had worked on were natural landscapes, because his work...
Do you want to see a couple?
Sorry?
Do you want me to put up a couple? Do you want to see a couple? I've got a couple. I can't remember where the first one's from.
I thought you said, have you got a tadpole? Hence my confusion.
That's not what I said.
Yes.
Like,
so you understand why I looked a bit stunned then. Yes. So the work he was doing was starting to make spaces refined and fashionable. So his spaces were the place to be, ladies. They were. So, and it was characterized by a number of things, really, his work. So if you go, sir, and you go, how do I know if this spot has been capabilitied? That's not an expression. So these were the sort of things we're looking at. So you would have large areas of smooth grass. Here we see some smooth grass. running up
by magic.
a big sweeping driveway, you know, the front of somewhere like a manor house. We would have clumps of trees or belts of trees, and sometimes they would be scattered. And the serpentine lakes, which were kind of this sort of shape, very, very popular as well. He did also like architecture. I think he fancied himself as a little bit of an architect, but he wasn't bad at it, but he didn't he probably was quite good at it, but his talent in architecture didn't really compare to his talent in terms of landscaping. That was sort of what dominated his success, really. So he had a favorite tree, as you do. Anyone else got a favorite tree? He had a favourite tree, cedars of Lebanon, which are evergreen conifers. So if you saw them, they were very capability. The serpentine lakes, the curved lakes, decorative buildings such as monuments, temples, rotundas and follies. Stone bridges over lakes, also very popular. Ha-has, which I thought was quite cute. Sunken walls that were there, so you couldn't really see them if you were outside, you know, perhaps looking in from the buildings. But they were there to stop the livestock entering, but they were called ha-has. Could you go, oh, ha-ha, there it is, as you basically fell into it and knocked
that well-known sheep phrase.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, clumps of trees, sweeping drives, and woodland bells for enclosures. So those are the types of things we are looking at. And I said, and as time went on, he was just honing his craft. He was getting all of these new compositions and things like that. And all of the time, people could really see where his work was going and how much of a visionary he was, because he would... Oh, actually, no, I'll talk it when we talk about this, actually. So where can we find his work? Lots of places. As I said, some of them you may very well have heard of, as well as some you won't. So between 170 to 250 examples. So the National Trust, for example, have 18 properties that they list as Capabilities Brown's landscapes properties, including, so I've done a few of note here to tell you a bit about them to help illustrate some of the things that he was doing. So in 1775, he did Berrington Hall in Hertfordshire, and that was his final landscape project. And I think if you look at that now, it says that the trees have now obviously bloom. They look magnificent. So what's happened is that, and this isn't the only example of this, when he's had his vision and he's created this landscape, it didn't occur to me to start with, you know, he's watched all these trees and things come into bloom and take shape and complete the landscape. Now, he knew he would never see all of these things in his lifetime, but he still had the vision of how to make it work and what it would look like, even though he could never, ever see it. And he couldn't even properly see one that somebody else had done because it was all in a different style. So that really made me think about how visionary he was to be able to do that. Or maybe I just have no vision whatsoever, but I was really quite impressed by that. I thought that was wonderful. Croom in Worcestershire in 1751. So this was his first really large scale project. And when he died in 1793, the owner, and I think this might have been what Philippa showed us, the owner, the Earl of Coventry, created a memorial to him by the lake for his, I can't pronounce this, inimitable genius, basically saying how clever and fabulous he was. Stowe in Buckingham, as I believe we have touched on, is where he began his career in 1741, which of course laid the ground for everything that was to come as he went through and he met the new people and he made his connections that he was working with. This has a Grecian valley, which sounds very fancy, and that was an example of the naturalistic style that he had that we were talking about a few moments ago, and what made him so incredibly famous. And that was where, as Kat said, he married Bridget in St Mary's Church and lived there in one of the boycott pavilions. Now, Historic England said that they manage 8 of Capabilities of lands and projects. In 2018, they've published the first ever catalogue of his plans, and you can find that on Historic England's website. I say that it didn't want to load, but the link is there and it might work. They also carried out all this research that put this together on the back of the 2016 Capability Brown Festival, which was quite cool. And that one contained 82 plans, but when they subsequently revise editions, they quite often find some more. So we've got, so we had all of those, 18 properties from National Trust, 8 from Historic England, English Heritage. The ladies have gone wild and put up a blue plaque.
Wow.
You don't overdo it. At Hampton Court at the Wilderness House, saying that he lived here from 1764 to 1783. Now, one that you will have heard of a lot, obviously, as well, is Blenheim Palace. Okay, with the Churchills. And George III, back to him again, bless him, as we mentioned him earlier, visited in 1786 and said of Capability's Brow, as he looked across the landscape, "We have nothing to equal this." And that was commissioned in 1763 by the 4th Duke of Marlborough. We've talked about the Dukes of Marlborough before, haven't we? The delightful Sarah Churchill. And one of the things, I mean, he did a lot of work, Capability Brown did a lot of work for this project. This is an example of something really quite amazing he was able to do. He, not on his own, he widened the river, let the area flood, and then created a dam so that he could control the river, and also a sort of waterfall effect to keep it flowing at the right pace. And that helped to create the lake that we see there today. So he could just sort of see these things and work on them and imagine them and put them together really quite easily. So we talked very briefly about Hampton Court as well. In just as an FYI, in April 2016, they had an exhibition at Hampton Court called The Empress and the Gardener, and that was about Capability Brown. And Philippa's going to touch on this, and I think Kat mentioned it as well, about how some people can think that it talked about how he destroyed the gardens and things like that. But he didn't always do that. So the way we've been talking, it's almost as though he would get a space and he would go in and always completely transform this area in all the different ways. But actually, at Hampton Court, being possibly the most well-known one, he didn't remake the gardens. He said, out of respect to himself and his profession. So he kept the historic layouts, he kept the gravel paths, and people apparently were saying to him, you know, that he was very neglectful because he hadn't gone in and stripped a lot of it out. And he was furious about this. This was his professional reputation, to say that he was being neglectful of his space, but he wasn't. He was being respectful of the history in that location as far as he was concerned. And one thing he did do, which I thought was lovely, was he stopped them clipping those big trees in the Great Fountain Garden. So they just got absolutely massive, absolutely huge. And so now, starting sort of about 100 years later, they clip them now to that sort of mushroomy shape that we still see today. Which I thought was rather lovely. But they got huge. Apparently, these trees got a little bit out of hand. And apparently at Hampton Court as well, he put in the grapevine, which apparently is the largest grapevine in the world and produces lots of grapes, obviously, for lots and lots of wine. Claremont Landscape Garden is quite close by. Again, he just refined a lot of the original features. So a lot of the time what you see there today is his work, but it's just a refinement on what was there previously to keep the history, but try and bring in a little bit of a more modern feel perhaps to things. So a few more famous places you might have heard of: Syon Park of Syon House, where Lady Jane Grey found out she'd become queen. The Gardens of the Duke of Northumberland Stately Home. So it's on the Thames. That was another one of his first major commissions. 2 phases of work starting in 1754. So he had these big sweeping vistas, pleasure grounds, and the Serpentine River. The Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew, which if you've ever been to, you haven't. Absolutely ginormous. I mean, ginormous and amazing. So what a space to be involved in working on. So there were other architects involved in this as well, including William Kent, who I mentioned previously, and another guy called Charles Bridgman, and they had worked on the Baroque gardens. So he'd worked on them a little bit earlier. But Capability Brown was said there to have designed the Royal Pleasure Gardens and the kitchen garden for poor little George III. And just other places really quickly you may have heard of: Alnwick Castle, Belvoir Castle. This is spelled, I had to mention this because Philip and I talked about this. I moved to Leicestershire, where this is, and it's spelt Belvoir. So I said, "Oh, Belvoir," and they all laughed at me.
Belvoir.
Northerners. It's pronounced Beaver. Makes no sense to me, but there you have it. Beaver Castle, Burghley House, Burghley as in Lord Burghley of Elizabeth I fame, Chatsworth House, which of course you have probably seen because it has had so much stuff filmed in it. 3 different Pride and Prejudices, The Crown and Peaky Blinders being some of the most famous ones. Kimbolton Castle, obviously where Catherine of Aragon passed away. Longleat, which is also like zoo, does lots of breeding. The guy that owns it looks like a lion. I don't think, is he dead? I should have googled that.
No, he's dead now.
He is dead.
The artist. I've been inside, and he had done very strange things with paper mache on the inside of the manor house.
I've heard some things that we won't go into. But anyway, Warwick Castle.
I'm going into it. It's History After Dark. He was a right goer, wasn't he?
He was.
He was interesting.
Yeah, he's obviously got family still alive, so I'm not.
He had portraits, I think, as if I remember correctly. He had portraits of all of the all of his partners on the wall, on the staircase, as far as I remember.
And it's a big staircase. Warwick Castle, obviously. So Warwick, as in Earls
Warwick.
Think Wars of the Roses. And the last one I wanted to mention was Sabernape Forest, which I know a lot of people won't have heard of, but that's the location of Real Wolf Hall. So there we go. So that's some of the stuff he did and how fancy it was. So even if you haven't been to the UK, I'm sure you will have seen pictures and film of his work in it. Or if you're in the UK, places,
if you've seen this,
you've seen that. That reminds me of
all this.
Number 1, the larch. Yeah. Look at those trees that are like they've been cut in half. So you've very possibly come across his work without even knowing it. But obviously they're quite, some of the things, the characteristics are repeated and very distinct. So have a look at it. If you're going somewhere and you like to read up about it before you go, then check out the website wherever it is, and it will probably say. So there we go. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
The Beaver Castle, the official residence of Had. I have been there, but a very long time ago, before I was into history. I tried to go 3 times.
3 aborted visits. 3 aborted visits.
It was not meant to be.
It was not meant to be. Not yet. No.
No.
Weird.
We should go. It's not that far from me, so I'll take you, Philippa.
Okay. It's quite away from me.
So, anyway, wait till you see Philippa.
Put your hat on, Philippa.
I haven't brought it with me because I'm away. So I'm improvising.
She's MacGyvering it. She's MacGyvering her own French hood. No, sorry, Gable hood.
Hang on, I've got to work. It probably won't go on the same as it did before now. That
Amazing work. Spectacular.
Fabulous.
Glorious. Divine.
Okay, I've never felt more beautiful.
You look incredible.
Stunning.
Yeah.
Stunning. This is what you need. So everybody capture this image. This is what's going to be on Philippa's Christmas card this year. when you get your BHT Christmas cards. That's
yeah. It'll be there.
Okay.
I need a bit more height. There you go. Wonderful.
Yes. Okay. So this week, ladies, we've had a letter. It's
an actual physical letter.
A physical letter, dropped off by a carrier pigeon. I've not read it yet, so it could say anything. It could say anything. Could. Okay. Oh, it's not. Some of it's in capital letters, so it's obviously serious. No expense spared on the props here. Dear widows, I need some serious help. I am a bride of Gloucester. No, that's it. So, as you can see, my partisanship has somewhat gone down the toilet since I started listening to that book.
Catherine got spicy. She's now poking the bear. I approve that message.
Can I mention
I
something
have
about the
had.
boar?
I'm going to front up now because it was probably obvious from that. I have had some people message me, and sometimes they are me. Yes. Right. Ladies, what on earth can we do? What on earth can we do? Because this is a desperate case. I mean, you know, of all the things we've dealt with so far, I think this is the most urgent.
It's ironic that the bride collector has contacted the widows of Lancaster.
She can see a way out. A way out. Oh dear. Right, Kat. You look like you don't quite know what to do with yourself.
Well, yes.
Pretty picture of this sort of psychological treatment.
I am a bride of Gloucester. Help. Well, there's sometimes
you're in a cult for a start.
You're in a cult.
You're in a cult. I'm gonna actually refer to my favourite murders advice, the podcast, which is you're in a cult, call your dad. If you don't have your dad, maybe call somebody else's. You need extracting, you need deprogramming, you need to read a history book that doesn't just confirm your point of view.
Put down
have a
the
nap.
sun in splendor. Put it down.
Have a little nap. Margaret Beaufort is not the root cause of all evil or the reason why life hasn't gone the way you wanted it to. It's okay. Have a Bourbon biscuit. And maybe buy a vibrator. My advice for you is buy a very aggressive vibrator. And just go to bed for a while with that.
And your Bourbon biscuit.
And your Bourbon biscuits. Don't confuse
that's
the two.
For afterwards, isn't it? That's for afterwards.
It's a very different type of sausage roll, ladies and gentlemen. Philippa, do you have anything to add to Kat's words of wisdom for this poor soul with your jumper around your face?
Why would anyone not take me completely seriously? Perfect. Oh no!
Because people are crazy.
Crazy, mate. So
crazy.
Right, I have nothing to add except this is random, but today I was in a museum in York looking at some artifacts. Now, York, of course, were well up for Richard. Loved him. Why have I not noticed this about the boar badge before?
It's got to. Oh.
Those are massive testicles.
I'm not sure that always there.
Do your balls hang low? Do they dangle to and fro? Can you tie them in a knot? Can you tie them in a bow? Apparently, he's got massive bollocks.
Yeah.
Massive.
Yeah.
They would be some Betty Swats right there. Can you imagine this in the heat?
That's why they all like Richard III.
They love a massive bollock.
He's got massive kahunas.
I don't think that's on all of the boar badges. York are a little bit,
that might be why
pro Richard. Maybe that's their version.
Really pro Richard. There's a sign right there, just how enthusiastic they were for him.
It's all starting to make sense at this point. You see, maybe that's Kat's point about the vibrator. Anyway.
Yeah. So there you go. I think that might have something to do with it. So just saying.
No, I think that's I think that makes an awful lot of sense.
Okay.
Impressively, for the professional amongst us, there are people in the comments still discussing landscape architecture and not insane women and pigs' testicles. So kudos to you guys for staying on point. Well,
it's my bit now.
So if you want to stop being a widow of Lancaster, then remember that
Bride of Gloucester.
There are Bride of Gloucester. There are alternatives to livestock with large genitalia, and that is shops that sell biscuits and toys for adult entertainment. I don't have much to add to that. It didn't involve poison, but maybe you could poison the boar and have a nice bacon sandwich when you've finished.
Yummy. And here's the thing: when it comes to boars, etc., to quote the fabulous Jamila Jamil, anything's a dildo if you're brave enough. So we've come full circle.
But as Richard found out, what is it? The dildo of consequence becomes lubed.
I lost you then. The dildo of consequence. The dildo of consequence
really comes lubed.
Okay.
I mean, I'd apologise, but I'm not sorry. Anyway, there was no expense spared on the props today. I hope you appreciate it.
We appreciate them. We definitely appreciate them. Yeah. Right. So it's my bit. Yay! I think the water's kicking in now. Okay. So
you see, drug history's got nothing on us.
Right, so capability, and a few of you have pointed out, we have left this till the end. His name is in fact Lancelot Brown. His nickname is Capability, and that was down to what Catherine was talking about. His ability to vision, really have this vision of not just the landscape, how he could create it in his own lifetime, but even how it would develop past his lifetime, but also how it would be used. So yes, we have a lot of grassland, but there was also the thought process behind that was grazing cattle, and kind of it was a bit it was sort of the fashionable thing of the day to kind of try and mix the two, as well as give great views and everything. But also what Catherine mentioned is not just he didn't just have that capability of vision, but capability of actually understanding the nuts and bolts, if you like, of getting that landscape created and maintained. So Catherine, when you mentioned before damming a stream and a waterfall and that was all to do with creating flow, so that he didn't create a pond that went stagnant, which is something that we can look at and sort of take for granted, that of course it's not a stagnant pond, but of course that had to be designed. There's technical considerations there. He also understood plants, as we know, grasses, how they would grow, drainage, and perspective. So he's got this sort of overall vision, this technical capability, and he understands perspective. So when he puts a building somewhere, it's not just, oh, that would be nice to have something somewhere in that sort of vista, but he understands what size that needs to be, what angle it needs to be at, what height it needs to be, etc., etc. So he's really got the full package, and all of that combined to make
that ball. Sorry.
And then a little ball just goes on, and all of that combined to create something that looks effortless. It looks natural. And herein lies one of the criticisms of Brown. So he's been so there's a few criticisms. One is that he's got rid of the gardens that came before, so our formal gardens, Blenheim Palace, I wanted to bring up a picture, but it's their picture and I wasn't sure if that might be an issue on YouTube. But if you look on their website, on Blenheim Palace's website, when we had a really hot summer, actually not the hot summer that 2022, it might have been that one, but anyway, there's a picture that they took from above of the massive lawned area, and it shows underneath, you can see the outline of the formal gardens that there was, that basically Capability Brown got rid of to put the grass there. So he's been criticised because he got rid of those kind of gardens. We lost a lot of those sorts of gardens. In order to replace it with what people said is it's basically plagiarizing God, and then using that same template over and over and over again in a very profitable manner. So the envy that I think that Kat talked about earlier, there's envy in there. I think I saw one estimate that said he was earning equivalent to around about £800,000 a year. So he's really, really raking in the money for what some people have said is just basically a copy and paste across the country, and getting rid of, while simultaneously wiping away some historic gardens. So you can look at Blenheim for example of that. And it wasn't only the destruction of the gardens, but in order to create some of these landscapes, he got rid of actual whole sort of hamlets, which I'm imagining aren't like massive villages. They're going to be like a set of 4, 5, 6 cottages or whatever. In one case, at Bowood House, so this one that I showed you before, this lake underneath there is actually the foundations or the low level walls left of a number of houses in a hamlet, which was flooded in order to create this lake. At Cream Park, an entire village, like I say, I'm not sure it's a massive village, but was relocated, and the medieval church of that village was demolished and a new Gothic church was created, because he actually is thought to be behind quite a few building projects as well as landscape projects. And at Roche Abbey, he sort of tidied up the ruins a bit. So they were a little bit irregular, so he decided to tidy them up. So that was obviously a criticism. And then the designs themselves, obviously the creation of them is one thing, but the design of them is one thing, but the creation of them is going to be a result of hard labor. These lakes, these hills are hand dug, by men with spades. So it's hard work, and he's been criticised sort of making money on the back of sort of hard labouring men. Like I said before, he's been accused of plagiarising God in one way, or that the trend was also already there. It was already beginning. I think Kat or Catherine, sorry, I don't know which one of you mentioned that it was already sort of in its infancy, and what he managed to do was jump on that and sort of it became synonymous with his name, and that made him a lot of money. I think though, and just as an aside as well, apparently Brown got rid of a lot of his records, which is interesting. So the places that we know that he worked on are due to the records being kept for those properties, not Brown's records himself. So in fact, we're not completely sure exactly how many projects he designed or that were executed, or where he worked, what he actually did. And that is either his genius or otherwise, depending on whether you take the view that he took nature and improved on it, or he plagiarized nature. But of course, he's creating so I've said about the hard labour there, but he's creating a lot of jobs, local jobs, in an era where hard labour is the job. I mean, like physical labour is the work. So they're paid, they get, you know, it's a job. So, and also he's doing this on the behest of the property owners. I think if he wasn't going to design a garden like this or a landscape this way, then someone else was going to. So, you know, this is the trend at the time. And also, was he actually doing anything different to what people have done before or after? These formal or quasi-formal gardens, they were created on top of something that happened that was there before. Something else was wiped away to create those. And I noticed that one of the properties, Harewood, had a 2023 reimagining the landscape sort of project, without much talk about Capability Brown and his work there as well. So this is, you know, and they're talking about sustainable landscape and all this. So sort of having more changes, you know, on top. So I think he was part of an iteration. But anyway, so there's the criticisms of him, and some people are very strong in sort of describing him more as a environmental vandal than a landscape architect. So
yeah, okay, I can see that. I don't know, but I can see it. I hadn't considered it like that. So I think it's
if we're going to talk about environmental vandalism, whatever Capability may or may not have done, take the cake for me is the Victorian city planners, and first and foremost their adoration of plane trees, which plane tree pollen, if that the pollen particles are massive, if that gets in your eye, it's like a caltrop getting in your eye. It absolutely burns like a bastard. On top of that as well, all over the place around that period, when trees are being planted, the decision is made to plant only male trees.
Clever.
So that it doesn't produce fruit. Because you can't have people being fed for free.
Exactly. That's exactly it. We're still having that now. There are still places getting rid of trees or planting trees that are not, they're just for decoration, where they could be. Why not? Why haven't we got productive trees everywhere? It's very interesting, and like it seems to have started then.
But I mean, you know, the Tudor Knot Garden, for example, is an obviously highly stylized, obviously man-made construction. And from the time that our species started doing arable farming and having it, when we settled, we ceased to be nomadic. When we started planting crops and farming animals and all of the rest of it, we started messing with the landscape and essentially, what was it, the word? Plagiarizing God. It's not new. This is how people, since they've settled, have engaged with the landscape.
Yes, and there was more grazing than we possibly see on some of these estates now, because they're now not lived in. That, you know, if they're National Trust or English Heritage, you haven't got a landowner probably. It's not being used in the same way that Brown actually designed it for. So it's a more productive landscape than actually what came before it. Like you say, I mean, a Tudor Knot Garden, we might like the idea of it, but it's not a productive garden. It's designed to be a show off. It's a show off piece.
Yeah.
I don't need to produce anything on this land because I've got so much of it that I've got other land where the food's being produced. So I still think he is a genius. I think he's
Also, as well, if he said about
underrated.
Hampton Court that he wanted to preserve the history, so he could have ripped that out and charged them a fortune, a lot more than he did, but he didn't. So,
and I think I can't remember at Blenheim whether he kept the parterre, whether that was reinstated.
Don't know.
But yeah, and like he was doing what the property owners wanted anyway. You know, they wanted this change. He's not forcing it on anybody.
No, he comes down and goes, right, have this done or else.
Yeah,
I'll do it anyway, and then just yes. So
quite. I'm sure they could have looked at his plans and gone, no, leave that church there, leave those houses there. No, they wanted it moved. They wanted them moving. Right. But he didn't get rid of Woodstock. That's the only thing I would say. That wasn't him. That was done way earlier at Blenheim Palace. Yeah. So yes, he was saying about the bridge there. Yeah, the bridge was already there, and then he did something with it because he's created underwater or rooms or something in the bridge that you wouldn't know are there, which I didn't really understand. Maybe we don't know why they're there.
It's a mystery.
Well, he's got rid of his plans. So.
There might be somewhere. You never know. You know how things just randomly turn up now and then. You never know.
Yeah, you never know. So pretty
maybe they're all in one of those mystery bridge rooms.
Mystery bridge rooms.
Yeah, you were just saying about how the bridge
might have the water rooms in the bridge.
Yeah, it might be. Who knows?
So, pretty big. Woodstock was the old royal manor, which, so Blenheim Palace sits on the royal, what do you call it, of Woodstock, anyway, land, which was gifted to the first Duke and Duchess of Marlborough. They got rid of the crumbling Woodstock Palace so that their view was unhindered. But that's the first Duke. Capability Brown isn't there until the fourth Duke.
Quite a while later. Yes.
Yeah.
So there we go. Yeah. So I think we quite like Capability Brown. I think, however the hell we're going to score this, he'll probably do quite well.
Yep.
Yeah.
However we're going to do it, probably do quite well.
Kept his nose clean.
Yeah.
Made a pretty park or two. And I heard, I can't remember how many hectares it is that he's supposed to have, or he's thought to have landscaped, but it's like the same, it's like the area of a small county, equivalent of a small county. Is that 800,000 hectares or something?
Yeah. I read that somewhere. Now I can't. Yeah, it was mind blowing. Like, yeah,
understated. I was going to read you what is on his obituary actually, because this kind of sums him up. Let me see if I can find it now. I might just talk among yourselves. Oh, here it is on his obituary. So closely did he copy nature that his works will be mistaken, and so
that's nice. I like that. It's not ostentatious. It's just quite.
And also, it's accurate. It's this kind of, this notion, and in some ways, it's so symbolic of the way in which, particularly, I think, English history is misremembered for various purposes. But this notion of the clean lines created by Capability Brown and these very manicured and managed spaces that are so well managed they look natural. It's very much like curated history that far too many people would like to see regurgitated about our country, where it's all clean and everything lives in its perfect little box and all of the water goes where you want it to go. And unfortunately, nature isn't like that, and nor is history.
Yeah.
Oh God, excuse me. Not you.
Okay, you out of bed.
Big yawn. I've been trying to sleep more as well, but my body and on my brain hate me and go, no. So even if I get to sleep earlier, even if I managed to do that, 5:45, I woke up the other day.
Grim. That's got a 5 in it.
I know it's got 2 5s in it, but yes.
Yeah, but the
I was
beginning.
like, that's ridiculous. You're trying to go back to sleep, but then you can't. Anyway, enough of my woes.
And my computer is about to have a full nervous collapse, I think. So
okay, Philippa, what's happening next week?
Next week we're talking Darwin. We're going to Darwin, the father of the evolutionary theory, etc., etc. So we'll be back next week with him.
Yes. Right, all the other normal things as well. There's been lots of stuff scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Thank you if you've been reading it. So first of all, please do support us at what is it? buymeacoffee.com /podcast. You can buy lots of mini Winnebagos. Thank you to everybody who does that. We're all saving up for our Winnebago tour on the Beaver bus. You can also join our close friends down there. Now, close friends is if you follow us on Instagram. If you don't, you should. If you're on Instagram, it's history.after.dark. And close friends is where every now and again I put a load of really bizarre stuff on our close friends.
The one today was good. I like the one today.
So you can sort of assess my sort of mental state on that day by what goes up there. We also have a Substack. There's not loads on there now, but one day it's going to be the place to be, and it's free to join. It is History After Dark Hub at substack.com or something. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, well done.
The one. Thank you very much. I've got both of those this evening. You can also go to our link tree and check out a number of things, including our merch, which Kat touched on earlier. So there's the classic tees and things with my new name on them. Mugs, sliders, the T-shirts that don't come with my tits in them, I'm afraid. We're back to being a dominatrix. Perhaps we could negotiate. No, we can't. I think that's it. Is there anything else?
If you do have a past problem that you need us to sort out, email us. Send it History After Dark 2021. History After Dark 2021 at gmail.com. You can do that.
Right. I think that's all of it.
Also, please make sure that you have subscribed to us here, that you have clicked the bell icon beside the subscribe button, selected all the drop down that will appear. That will notify you when we are next going to be going live. Additionally, please make sure you like this video. If you do like it, thank you. Please do share it out. Thank you for watching along with us. If you're watching on the playback, thank you for your patience.
Well done.
And hopefully you can make a live next time, because it is good fun, and we do love seeing you in the comments and watching what you're saying. I'm not the only one to think this, but I'm really chuffed by the community that we have built here, and it's really lovely to see you chatting with each other and sharing in jokes, and it's a really nice way to spend a Wednesday. So thank you, because it's also lovely that we three met online. We did not know each other. We met through Clubhouse, and now these two absolute nutters are probably the people that I speak to most in the world, apart from my husband and son. So people who have at some point been inside of me. These are the only people that get spoken to more than them. And with that, shall I? We love you, is what I'm saying in a vulgar way. Shall I count us out?
Let's do that.
And I need a drink now.
Also, another thing, you are right. It's awesome that we are such an international community of depraved reprobates. Thank you all. Awesome. So on that note, I'm going to count us out. That is, we're going to leave in 3, 2, 1. Bye.
Bye.